Sorry about that. So again, all the members of the trustees are here at the bottom of the screen. And over on the right, you can see these are individuals, these are staff. We have different partners throughout the town and people who are participating in this process as well. And I also want to give a special shout out to the Community Preservation Act committee. And these are individuals who are really helping us connect with some of the funding that the trust is going to be using in order to generate and preserve affordable housing. So the trust was created to address affordable housing needs, to support local control of housing initiatives, to engage in real estate activity, make quick, timely decisions about real estate, and to collect money funding from a variety of sources. And we're here tonight because the trust hasn't made these decisions yet. They're here, we're working on an action plan, which Karen Kelleher is going to describe in just a little bit. We're in a phase of that plan where the trustees are actively listening to what the community wants. We want to hear about what you'd like to see as far as preservation, creation, affordability levels, and more. So tonight we're going to share the results of one of the listening tools that the trust has been using for engagement this summer, which was the Affordable Housing Survey. And then we'll be going on to listen to your ideas about what you want the trust to accomplish, which is going to happen around the second part of the meeting. So I'm going to turn this over to Karen Kelleher, the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust, to describe the work that's going into the action plan.
Thanks so much, Kelly. I want to start actually by acknowledging Kelly's and Marisa Lau's support and the hard work they've been putting into this process, along with the trustees and all of the community partners we've been working with. So we're very grateful for the strong professional support we get from the town. The process that we're following to arrive at an action plan that will guide our work is following several particular periods. We have completed a planning and preparation period in the spring where we prepared and planned for a community engagement process and started to think about what an action plan might look like so that we could frame the community engagement process. During the summer, we are conducting that community engagement, and then we will put forth a draft action plan at the end of the summer, and there'll be a review period for the community to provide comments and feedback on that plan in the fall. That document will then go to the select board. The final document will be revised to incorporate that additional feedback, and then it will go to the select board for approval before we'll implement it. This slide, if you are part of town meeting, you've seen it before, it's been on our website. These are a whole host of things that we have already completed during that planning and preparation stage. I'm not going to go through them in great detail. These slides will be posted to our webpage on the town's website after this meeting. So if you'd like to look at them in greater detail, you're absolutely welcome to do so. I'm going to pass now actually to fellow trustee Neil Mongold, who is representing the Housing Corporation of Arlington on the trust, and ask him to tell you a little bit more about the community engagement process that is the summer portion of that process. Neil?
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, just briefly wanted to talk a little bit about the concept and the importance of community engagement around affordable housing issues. Arlington, as many of you know, is really fortunate to have a number of groups and organizations that are highly interested and highly motivated and are involved in many ways in working on the issue of affordable housing. And we have engaged with many of them through meetings and discussions, conversations, but we also felt it was really important to do an inclusive, broad range of community engagement, to hear sometimes from folks that maybe don't attend town meeting or aren't the usual suspects that you might find at some of the zoning meetings and so on and so forth. So we have made a really conscious effort to be out on the street corners, so to speak, to be at the beer garden, to be at Porch Fest, to be at the farmers market and so on. We've been passing out the surveys, and we are really reaching out to find folks who maybe have a need for affordable housing or an interest in affordable housing, but are not the usual voices. So we've found it's been already this summer has been very interesting in our outreach and our community engagement process. I guess we can go to the next slide. Just to say some of these are kind of reiterating a little bit some of the activities that the trust has taken on, particularly the survey, which we'll be hearing the results of tonight. which, amazingly got over 800 responses, and again, was distributed at many locations that you might not normally, in addition to, the Arlington list and to the town website, but to other places where, maybe some of the smaller, lesser known voices were more present. So we, that was actually, quite an effort and very interesting. And then this summer, we're doing a series of what we're calling targeted listening sessions that are small group listening sessions. And we've focused those particularly on some of the groups, again, that are maybe not always represented in the bigger forums, like tonight's forum, for example. So we're really looking forward to those getting started this summer. We have the first one starting actually on Saturday morning at Robbins Library. So, and then of course tonight is the public forum to talk about the survey results and do some more listening on a broader scale. So I'll pass it back to, back to you, Karen.
Nope, to Phil Tedesco.
Oh, Phil, okay.
Thanks, everyone. And I just want to echo what Karen and Neil said. I just want to thank Kelly and Marissa and Jenny Raitt before when she during her tenure for all their work and support, and also all the trustees and the community partners. I think one thing people have said, just to emphasize, is that this is just a team effort. In some ways, it's fundamental to kind of who we are as a town and who we want to be. And I think it's just so encouraging to have so many partners so early, and for us to be able to continue that work. So in looking at the survey, as Neil said, we were all really, I think, happy about many things about the survey. The first is the number of responses, which was over 800. And the other is that it was very demographically representative of the town. So it does skew to a little bit higher income and whiter, as does our town. But there's a substantial number of people who rent, of people at different ages, people at different income levels, and people of different racial and ethnic backgrounds, who are all whose voices were in the survey, and as I say, in a way that was pretty representative of the town as a whole. And that was something we were focused on trying to have in the survey results, and we were very pleasantly surprised and happy that that it appears that it was successful on that score. So if you go to the next slide, the one to just what I want to do on the next few slides is just kind of highlight some of the sort of key takeaways from the survey. And this is just kind of highlights. As Karen mentioned, we'll be producing a much more detailed report from this, but want to just give the highlights today. So the first is perhaps unsurprising, given the town meeting vote to create the trust, was a really very strong response. 75.5% of the respondents said Arlington does not have enough affordable housing. And I think to some of the subjective responses or free responses that people gave, I think gave insight into sort of what might be behind that number a bit, which was quite broad. And we'll see that in some of the empirical answers, but also in the free responses. So for example, we need housing for teachers and librarians, shop and restaurant owners and workers. So sort of a group that you might think of as relatively middle class, but I also saw this anecdotally just in handing out postcards and talking to people, a need that many people who may seem middle class, housing is out of reach for them. And then also housing along with healthcare is a basic need, and that there are a real need for people who are for basic shelter that is affordable, and everything in between. Next slide, please. So the next, I think these are going to be sort of variations on a theme, at least in my mind. So we asked about, well, what populations or what what groups should be prioritized when we think about who should be, we should be focusing on the types of housing to serve. And it was, a lot of populations were getting very strong answers: families, seniors, families, with children at home, seniors, people experiencing homelessness. Obviously, these are not people with special needs and disabilities. And then on the right, you can see a list of others answers that people gave. A really broad, which I take away from this, is a really broad range of people at different life stages and different stations in life, in different life circumstances, who need affordable housing, and that the survey respondents felt we should try to find solutions for. Next slide, please. So then we also asked, well, so in the affordable housing sort of world, there are different income categories, that derive from different programs. And so we asked a question related to, what should we which of these income groups should we try to prioritize? And extremely low income, very low income, moderate. And if you see on the right here what those numbers correspond to in our area. So I took a couple things from this. One is people felt like we should try to give the most help to people who have the greatest need. Perhaps not surprising. The other is just again a very strong response that we should be looking to help sort of all these groups and provide as much, give help to a lot of groups and not look at it as zero sum, but sort of a both and, that there's a strong response, like in different types of groups, adherent at different income levels, to provide affordable housing. Next slide, please. So another question on the survey then was, well, what should we do about this? So we should provide, we should do more to create affordable housing. We should try to provide it for different demographic groups at different incomes. And we had a variety of responses. So many of them got strong answers. So one was the most frequent answer from well over half the respondents was policy changes to incentivize development of more affordable housing. So a recognition by the survey respondents that there is our current policy regime does not really allow for the creation of affordable housing. Others, the next was to more local funds to support affordable and leverage subsidies. So more money, different policy changes to make it more feasible to create affordable housing. Definitely also a recognition, as Kelly mentioned at the beginning, that we have existing housing, affordable housing of different types, including public housing, that needs ongoing subsidy, and we should make sure that what the current stock of affordable housing is preserved and maintained and modernized. And others responses here that I think are just about aligning this with our other values of our town: climate resiliency, equity and diversity, etc. Next slide, please. So the last one, I think, again, when I said sort of variations on a theme, I think we asked a number of questions, and I think got consistent answers across them. And this was another one saying, well, do you support the creation of more housing as a solution to create more affordable housing? And the majority, 61% of those respondents said yes to the answer of, I want Arlington to create more affordable housing. And I think additional housing could improve our community and help address our region's housing shortage. And another 13% said they're not sure about more housing generally, but I do support it if it's how we can best create affordable housing. So again, I think a strong response for people recognizing that more housing would be part of our the playbook for creating more affordable housing. Next slide, please. I think I'm going to hand it back to Karen, if I'm not mistaken, on the transfer fee. So I will turn it over now.
Sure, thanks, Phil. As you are likely aware, but maybe not, the town meeting also passed a home rule petition last year by a large margin that would allow us to generate local funds to support affordable housing by imposing a small fee on the transfer of real estate. Because that is considered a tax, it requires approval by the legislature and by the voters. But first we need to get it back from the legislature, and that hasn't happened yet. But because this is a strategy that town meeting supports and that there may be a chance to move forward, we wanted to ask residents how much they supported that. And I think what we found is that there's 63% of respondents are either likely or highly likely to support a small fee on real estate transfer fees. And then 19% say that they're unlikely or highly unlikely to support a transfer fee. And there's a significant chunk in the middle that aren't sure, all of which is very fair. There's a lot of details that would have to be fleshed out, but it does reflect that there's some will to put them, we heard strong support for creating more affordable housing, for supporting the affordable housing we have. And this is a little bit of, we're prepared to put our money where our mouth is in this particular way. That's already been proposed by town meetings. So we thought that was good to hear and to know where we stand on that question. I think I am passing it back to Kelly to start the listening portion of our evening and to just share the framework for that.
Sure. So thank you, Karen. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, everyone. So we are going to reserve the rest of this meeting to talk about two things. One is to hear from you about the survey results. And then the second is more of a general listening session. And so I know Phil is going to give you some questions that may help you kind of get some answers. But before we get into that, I just want to explain, we're listening both to people who feel comfortable speaking out in front of this group here. We're also listening in the chat. So if you feel more comfortable putting something in the chat, we're listening there as well. And we're also listening over email. So I think the bottom of the screen is a little obscured here, but I'll put the trust email address into the chat. And if you would prefer just to send an email to the trust and let them know kind of your responses to some of these questions or your thoughts about how the trust, the activities that the trust should pursue, we definitely want to hear from you that way as well. Thank you, Karen. So just as far as rules of engagement, I think it's just always good to have a framework for how we speak to each other in these kind of settings. So everyone here is muted by default, and please use the raise hand feature, and Phil will call on you to invite you to unmute and share your comments. You can find that at the very bottom of the screen. There's a little smiley face that says reactions, and under that, if you click on that, there's a little raised hand, and it's a little yellow hand that you can click and raise your hand. If you're comfortable when you're talking, please turn on your camera. I think it helps with just kind of seeing each other and connecting to each other as people. We're all humans here. I think that we have that one thing in common. So let's see who's talking, and let's listen to each other that way. As I mentioned, comments and feedback are also welcome in the chat. And we may not be able to answer like a lot of technical questions immediately, but we are saving this chat and we'll be trying to follow up in the next couple of days. I'm also, if there's more specific questions related to like the Department of Planning and Community Development, I'm happy to follow up with you individually on that. And just a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. We'll also be posting it to the town's website and ACMI and sharing it out with via town email and social media and whatnot in the next couple of days. And just a few other things to keep in mind, just, we're here to listen to each other. The trust is really here to listen to you. So please just respect each other's views. I think everybody thinks about affordable housing in a different way, and affordable housing itself is really complicated. So, you can voice disagreement with an idea, but please don't attack any people in this. I don't think there's any space for personal attacks here tonight. Keep your responses focused on the topic. Again, we're here to talk about the trust and what the trust can do regarding affordable housing. If we have a lot of speakers, we may need to limit speaking time. And so please don't take that personally. That's just, we want to hear from as many people as possible. And again, everyone is invited to contribute comments in the chat or via email. The trust email is arlingtonaht@gmail.com. And we'll share that a couple of times throughout the course of this listening session. And so with that, I'm going to hand this back to Phil if you want to start talking about the survey.
Sure. So thank you. So we just wanted to invite everyone to who would like to share, their thoughts and reactions and responses to the survey. Here, and we've put a few questions here that may help you frame or think about your ideas. Did you find anything surprising or interesting? Did they generate new ideas for you? What do you think the trust, how can the trust best be responsive to the survey, or other thoughts? So please, feel free to raise your hand, and we're happy to hear it.
It's not going to be much of a listening session if people don't have anything to say.
And I apologize in advance if so I'm just reading the names off the Zoom, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce your name. So Jennifer Seuss.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I found the survey results really interesting. A couple of things that stood out for me. I was pleasantly surprised that there was a sort of an even distribution of support for different kinds of housing for different groups of people. So that, sometimes people are only interested in senior housing, or they're only interested in family housing. It seemed like there was a very broad-based support, and I thought that was really good. The other thing that surprised me is that 61% said they wanted more housing generally, sort of understanding the supply-demand issues, that the lack of enough housing makes it harder for people to afford to live here. And that was it. I know that there's a lot of decisions to be made about how to support affordable housing. One thing the survey results did suggest is that sort of adding money to make projects more deeply affordable for people might be a great way to go. So that, for example, if you have a 40B, you can add additional funds to make it more accessible to people at lower income levels. But so those were my thoughts, and I'll sign off now. Thanks.
Thank you. Zach Phillips.
Yeah, thanks. This is really, really interesting. I just have a really basic question, which is, I am a pastor of a church in town. I've been doing that for almost 4 years now. And in that role, I've helped a number of people get housing. And one thing that has been challenging is trying to learn all of the different options and layers of bureaucracy. I think I understand it, and then I learn of a new option. And some of this is in Arlington, some of it's outside of Arlington, but could someone speak to, or maybe there's a resource somewhere of just what affordable housing does exist in Arlington and how do people access it?
Phil, do you want me to?
I was going to say, Kelly, I was going to see if you would be able to speak to that. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I'll share a link in the chat. So we have, we continually maintain our subsidized housing inventory. That's basically our inventory of affordable housing in town, and we maintain that on a page on the town's website. Every time we have new properties that are added to our subsidized housing inventory, we did this most recently with the new developments that the Housing Corporation of Arlington did by adding 117 Broadway and Downing Square to the inventory. So we maintain that list there. And then we also have a lot of resources on that page of the website for where people can go to reach out and to get on lists or find out more about affordable housing in town. So the town itself as an entity, we don't maintain our own affordable housing. We don't provide affordable housing directly to residents, but we are trying to connect people with those providers. And I'll share that link in the website. It's just going to take me a second to get it up there.
Don Seltzer.
Thank you, Don Seltzer. I'm a 50-year resident of Arlington, both in but for most of the time as a homeowner. I think one thing that isn't quite present in the survey and might be an important consideration is, are we talking about affordable housing for ownership or for rental? I'm looking at the market, and it seems like the ownership affordable is just beyond our capability with how vast sums of money. There's too big a gap between what HUD defines as affordable ownership and what the market rate is for new and anything of that sort. And I think that probably most of the opportunity for creating affordable housing is going to be found in the rental market, where there's less of a gap between the market rate and what would be an affordable rental rate for a family. And other trends that's a little disturbing in that our rental properties seem to be shrinking. There's a lot of urbanization going on, and the traditional two-family, which has been really the heart of Arlington's population and growth throughout the years, in which someone would be able to gain a foothold in a two-family, renting out half of it, living in the other, and building up equity that way. Those are all disappearing as they get converted to duplex condos. So I just hope that this committee will spend some more attention looking at and distinguishing between the goals of creating affordable rental housing and affordable ownership housing. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, no, that's an important distinction, and certainly something that we have and we'll look at as we develop an action plan. Grant Cook.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So it was interesting to see the data in the survey, because it tells you a lot, but it tells you many different things. I think, to echo what Jennifer said about it, support for all types of income ranges, from low to moderate, different types of housing approaches. I think one of your challenges, it points out, is that what niche does the trust fund want to fill? We have two very strong organizations in the AHA and HCA. AHA providing very low income, even up to out of homelessness housing. AHA providing kind of more moderate income. Does the trust see itself as a subordinate, assisting hand in projects led by those organizations? Does it strike out on its own into niches? I mean, I really disagree with Dawn about rental versus ownership, because ownership has the power of actually generating wealth, which rental kind of tends to require you to be poor for a long time. And both of them require immense amounts of capital. Rental properties still have to be built, which requires capital to buy the land and build the housing. So you're just talking about variances in financing. So, is ownership a niche that you could play a role in? But I think you have a challenge in, do you strike out in your own direction, providing kind of housing that you can't, or options that we can't provide with our major players in town today? Or do you slot into kind of a supportive role of those organizations, using the monies you have for sort of spot tactical opportunities? So I think it's a challenge. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah, so thank you. And when we're not real estate developers, we're gonna, as part of this, obviously be thinking about what can the trust do, and what have other trusts done to help facilitate this. Okay, Winnell Evans, I know she was having trouble with the hand raise, but I wanted to recognize her to speak.
Thank you. Comments in addition to.
I'm sorry, I'm at least having trouble hearing you.
I'm sorry, I have a fan on, my computer overheats. I'm sorry about that.
Oh,
Is that
perfect.
better?
No, that's totally clear now.
Okay.
Yeah, totally clear.
In addition to thinking about funding the trust through a transfer fee, I think it would be terrific to think about other ways to advertise the trust and solicit funding for it, whether through direct donations, maybe even donations of property. There could be a lot of ways to get people involved about it, but it's really going to take some advertising. It's stunning how many people in town do not know what's going on. I heard somebody ask, what is that great big huge building going up in front of the high school? So there's really a need to make sure that people know that this is in the works, and to think about creative ways to get the funding in. And my second and final comment is the survey kind of conflated affordable housing and multi-unit housing, multifamily housing. And they're really two different things, because the multifamily housing that's being built now is market rate. And you could even argue that every time a market rate structure goes up, it permanently removes the possibility for an affordable bit of housing to go up there. So I'd love to see the trust, the language, the outreach, everything really focus on the fact that this is for affordable housing. And the survey showed the people that most respondents believe this should focus on are low income. So I hope that that will be the real thrust of this going forward. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Will Morgan.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much to the members of the trust and the town for this undertaking. It's such an important effort, and it is, you know, we recognize that it is very time consuming. And I'm so glad that there are folks who are prioritizing this and stepping up to lead these efforts. So thank you to everyone for all the work that you've already done. And I also I do have a comment, but I also just want to recognize too that I saw an email from the other day related to this meeting that the trust is also reaching out to specific groups who are, you know, likely the ones who are more impacted by housing costs than others in town. And I think that is so important, because not only are those folks more heavily impacted, but they're probably less likely to participate in this survey. And so I'm really glad to see that the trust is doing that specific outreach to reach groups who otherwise might not participate. And I think that's a really important thing to do. So my comment one is, you know, I think obviously there's a lot of support in the town broadly for affordable housing. In terms of sort of the question about, you know, how can the trust be responsive to what we heard in the survey? I think it's clear that public opinion, you know, is on the side of affordable housing in the town of Arlington. I think what is sort of the next big step is public action, and by that I mean, you know, the really tangible things that go into creating affordable housing, and a lot of that comes down to zoning and permitting, and being able to have, you know, areas of Arlington, if not the entire town, that are zoned for multifamily housing, and, you know, creating a permitting process that is doable for developers of you know, multifamily and affordable housing to get through that process. And I think that in Massachusetts in particular, towns can be very protective of their existing zoning districts and the tendency towards single family zoning. So I think, you know, that effort is certainly doable, but it takes a lot of public education around what that means and what the implications are. And so I would love to see, you know, sort of a discussion or education campaign about the things we might do to tangibly move towards the production of more affordable housing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. And just at the end here, I think there's going to be a on the specific listening sessions, we'll have further information, but I believe that's also on our website if you are a person who's interested in participating in one of those sessions. Shelley Dane.
Hi, thank you. I'm also very impressed with the survey and the participation. I have to say, in terms of one of the things that I was surprised about was I was surprised that there was so much interest in developing additional housing because the impression that I often get from any public meeting that I attend is that there's often a large outcry of folks who feel like there's too much development going on. So I was pleased to see that because I do think that we will need to build a lot more housing, and Arlington won't be able to solve all of the affordable housing problems that exist in the town, you know, when we live in a part of the state and a state that is generally experiencing lack of affordable housing and lack of housing. But we certainly, as a community, I think, are very interested in doing our fair share. I was surprised to see the questions about zoning and permitting. Again, I'm supportive of making those changes, but that seemed beyond what I typically think of as what the Affordable Housing Trust Fund does. And maybe that shows my naivete, but I think of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund as an organization that financially contributes to affordable housing, and I didn't think that they that typically get involved in zoning and permitting issues, though I firmly support that. I would also sort of say that I strongly advocate for the need for affordable housing to be climate resistant and to be forward thinking in terms of energy efficiency and where possible renewable energy. I think that that's something that the town in general needs to move forward to. And I think, especially when you're talking about more vulnerable populations, giving them the tools to be as resilient as possible makes a lot of sense to my mind. I do want to respond to a comment that was made earlier about sort of the conflation of multifamily housing and affordable housing. And from my experience, it is almost impossible to do affordable housing unless you do multifamily housing. It's just too darn expensive to do it one unit at a time. And also, I would say it may be useful also. Many of us think of multifamily housing as 5 units or more, and some people think of multifamily housing as 2 families. And I would say that it's also really hard to do affordable housing on a 2-family or 3-family scale. That you need scale to make things more affordable. And I guess that those are my comments.
No, thanks very much for all that. And I would say, you know, you're right. Just to respond to one thing, although I appreciate all your thoughtfulness. We you know, the Affordable Housing Trust does not have jurisdiction over zoning, and other bodies in town, you know, do, and ultimately town meeting. But you know, from thinking about it as a, well, how can we go about, what are the impediments to going about creating affordable housing? That was, you know, clearly that's a relevant variable. And so to ask, you know, kind of respondents in the context of thinking about, well, how can we make more affordable housing, to say, well, do you think, you know, what do you think we need policy change, and are you open to those changes? We thought was important to learn. So I saw a few folks with hands up. I just wanted to transition to the next kind of set of prompts, but obviously, you know, you guys, I'll, you know, get you in here to start us off. And if you wanted to respond to the survey or things people have said, that's obviously totally fine. Or you know, kind of respond to one of these more general questions, which is just to sort of open it up to what we're calling a general listening session, which is just more broadly maybe outside the survey. And I think some people's comments have sort of, you know, already sort of started touching on these kind of themes, just about housing more generally. what do you think the trust can be doing? What are some things that, you know, if you have ideas for what you'd like to see the trust accomplish? How do you think we can help people stay in Arlington? How do you think we can help people move to Arlington? And if you've seen things in other communities, either locally or elsewhere. So anyway, Joe Solomon.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, my comment suits these questions better than the last set, so good timing. Something that was interesting, and it's sort of I think an extension of what Grant was saying earlier, is there's this core desire to give people housing, right? You know, it's can you afford to be in a home of some sort in Arlington, right? And that's just the base level, right? I think it would be interesting to see what the trust thinks about their role in terms of those next steps of real estate ownership. And, you know, how do you use this as an opportunity to give people, as you're saying here, right, to stay in Arlington, right, to have an entry point that's then sustainable, that allows them to continue to be a citizen and a resident of the town. And that may be not necessarily the most capital efficient way of doing things, but I think looking at hitting some of those goals beyond just getting a roof over somebody's head would be interesting, right? And some maybe less tangible targets of, you know, do I want to acquire land and build a bunch of affordable housing, right? Like I think they did in Arlington Heights here recently. They just wrapped up a project. Or really, is it that, you know, I want to create affordable housing in a building that's integrated with people of a lot of different backgrounds and different economic abilities, because getting somebody who may be lower income just in a network with other people who can create those opportunities or share their background and what they've learned, right? It's, I think about like my parents, right? You know, my grandmother started off as a janitor at MIT, and she learned some stuff and got some connections, and my mother got to work in a lab at MIT and she learned some stuff, and you know, I ended up graduating from college, right? And that was because of the community that was around them. So being able to put people into a building that gives them that community of people who can create opportunity for them in the town, in their career, in their lives, would be interesting. And I get that's not as clear as here's $1 million, go build a building, but it's another dimension to think about in terms of how we measure the outcomes here.
No, thank you. And just one thing I wanted to highlight, I mean, I guess, sorry to go back to the survey a little bit, but that your thoughts made me think of is, you know, when we say, you know, which groups, you know, should we think about affordable housing for, you know, over the course of someone's life, they're going to fall into different of those categories personally. And so, you know, what you need today is not what you may need tomorrow, or what you need today may not be what your kids need tomorrow. And another kind of point I think that you were making that I agree with, and sorry to whatever use the chair's prerogative or whatever to talk, is just the idea of, you know, not having it be stigmatized that you live in a building, that's not a stigma thing for, you know, for only a type of people who are less well off. Barbara.
Yeah.
Yeah, me? Sorry, I can't, I'm talking and I suddenly can't hear. So I'm going to just ask my question. I have been really pleased to hear all of the discussions tonight, but I thinking how much more we could accomplish if we had the money that we would get, if we had that transfer tax. And I remember when we voted for that in Arlington about a year ago, and the realtors in town across the state went berserk. So I want to know what I can do and what we can do to make that real estate transfer tax both reasonable and responsible, but also available for the Arlington Housing Trust Fund.
Thank you. So I have not been following it, but I don't know, Kelly or Karen or anyone else, if you've been more in the weeds on that process at the State House, and what the, you know, if there's any current strategies you're aware of, or campaigns, and how people might be helpful to support that.
Jump ball, Kelly. You want it?
I was actually just looking up the Aloha Coalition, and so
Yeah.
I can put that that link in the website. And so the Aloha Coalition is the local option for housing affordability coalition, and this is a group of people from a variety of municipalities, from staff to leaders to elected officials, and residents who just are interested in actually financing affordable housing, because turns out housing is expensive to build. And so there's this coalition that you can, I will put the link in the chat, and you can get on their mailing list. And obviously the legislature is taking a summer break right now, but this will pick up, and it will need a lot of advocacy in order to get this through at the state level.
I think we could lean on the whatever new governor comes in too.
By all means possible.
Yeah.
Len Diggins.
Thanks. It was an answer to Ms. Thornton's question about our real estate transfer fee home rule petition. I mean, to the extent the session isn't over, I mean, the home rule petitions, I mean, I know they were all voted out of committee with favorable action. Ms. Leineman is correct. I mean, it doesn't seem like, I mean, the more general real estate transfer fee bill sponsored by Aloha, it's not going to succeed this year. I mean, they did try to get most of the measures associated with it as an amendment on another bill, and that didn't work. I mean, but if the session is indeed effectively over, then I guess our home rule petition didn't make it. But if it isn't, I guess there's still some hope, meaning that several municipalities, I think there are at least 9 that have HRPs for similar real estate transfer fees, may get adopted. So that's it. Thank you.
Right, and this may be obvious to everyone, but so just for anyone who's not, so because this is a tax, municipalities in Massachusetts do not have the power under our Constitution to have to tax unless the state authorizes it. And so what's happened in Arlington is that we have basically as a town, through town meeting, elected to ask the state if we can do it, and now we're waiting for the state to say, yes, you can do it. So then if it comes back to us, then we'd have to actually enact the tax. We would just have the authority to do it. So I don't know. Massachusetts local government law 101. So we have about about 10 minutes, in the scheduled time, if others have thoughts or comments that they would like to share, or other questions.
Phil, if we don't have any, maybe we could do just focus on the listening sessions, and then what's coming next, and then we can come back to take any additional comments. But why don't we just do those last?
Yeah, that's a great point. Let's do that. And I see a couple people have their hands back up.
Great. So we'll keep this conversation going, but just because we want to make sure we enable people to get all of the general information before they leave the session, we're just going to take a minute to share some information about those sessions and what comes next, and then we'll come back to this slide and keep the conversation going. And I think Eric Helmuth, who is our fellow trustee, who is a representative of the select board, is going to take these slides.
That's my cue. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Kelly and the team, and all my fellow trustees for the really hard work on this. And thanks everybody for coming tonight. This has been a great discussion. I've been listening carefully. I know that my colleagues have as well. And I'm here to summarize more listening. So as Will mentioned in his comment, we do have some upcoming sessions. Some of them are in person, some of them over Zoom. I'm happy to be taking notes on 1 or 2 of these. So we have sessions for particular type of groups of people who are affected and have affordable housing needs: renters, people with disabilities, people of color, younger people, residents who already live in affordable housing, and seniors. And the times are up on your screen. You can get information on this from the RSVP email address on the screen, and as well as our Affordable Housing Trust Fund website. Next slide, thank you. So what's next? We are now in a public comment period. It's been great to have some public comment. We want more. So we are going to summarize all this input from the activities starting with tonight. We're going to hold a second joint meeting of town bodies and other organizations that are invested in this area to get some input and make sure that we are being complete and comprehensive in our alignment. And then hold another public forum not very long from now. So the pace is really fast. It's really exciting. And so on September 21st, look forward to another public forum where we will tell you what we have learned from all these listening sessions and consultations. Finally, I do urge you to visit, to sign up for updates from the trust, and I'm sure that Kelly or Marisa can drop the URL into our chat for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund page, but we'd love for you to keep up to date. Thank you again for coming. I look forward to continuing the discussions tonight. Back to you, Karen or Phil.
I'll give it back to Phil to just keep the conversation going, but thanks to everyone for being here and for sharing your thoughts. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, just to echo that, thank you all very much for attending and taking the time and for all your thoughtfulness and comments. Don Seltzer.
Perhaps Lynn should be able to speak first since she hasn't yet, and I can go after her.
Thank you. That sounds good. Lynn Wolfstead.
Hi.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Hi. Hello. Hello. I hear that you live on my street, Phil, I think, but I've never met you. So, yeah, well, I'm not sure where this fits in because I unfortunately came in a little late. But one thing I volunteered doing is I help refugee families find housing. And one of the families right now that I'm looking for actually has a voucher, a 4-bedroom voucher. And, you know, I've been looking for them. And of course, that's a fairly large family, so it might be a little more difficult. But I did look at all the MLS listings on one day, just a few days ago for the towns of Malden, Arlington, and Medford. There were 44 bedrooms, 40, the number 40 of 4-bedroom apartments for rent. And the voucher price for a 4-bedroom, they have an MRVP, Massachusetts Rental Voucher Program. The price for that the voucher will pay is $3,253. And in Arlington, there were 0 apartments available. In Medford, there was 1 apartment available. And in Malden, there were 4 apartments available. And of course, these apartments go really quickly. So my idea, possibly, I don't know exactly how it would work because it's actually illegal for people to pay additional money to the landlord to bring it up to whatever price, the actual price, the actual prices. But for the town to maybe be able to in some way subsidize a certain number of landlords in some way that might be illegal so that they could actually bring their rental prices down so that a voucher, they could potentially take a voucher, not, and I won't even get into this now, not that anybody will take a voucher in this kind of market, but that's a whole nother conversation. So that's all I wanted to say. And like I said, I'm sorry if it doesn't quite fit in well here.
No, that's perfect, and that's right in. So thank you very much for sharing that. Mr. Seltzer.
Thank you. Last year, I discovered about the community investment tax credit, and it's a great thing. And there's one organization in town that participates in that, and that's the Housing Corporation of Arlington. And I was going to float the idea of whether this trust fund could become a TC participant as one way of perhaps drawing in more donations. I won't go into the details of why CITC is a great thing. People can look it up. So I just offer that to you as one way to spur donations to the fund. The second thing is looking at the schedule for the interest groups coming up in the future. I'm kind of surprised and dismayed that the one for seniors, which I would have participated in, is in person only. For health reasons, I simply cannot, and I expect that there are a lot of other seniors who have the same reservations about attending such a meeting. And I've already expressed to Rebecca Gruber my hope that it could be changed to a virtual one to draw in a broader audience.
Phil, you haven't been in a lot of the, like, it might be best if I can respond to that. I totally appreciate that, Don. There's a, differing opinions about what would be the best way to reach each of these groups, and we're trying things and learning from it. We did get a lot of feedback that seniors might struggle more with technology and that using a virtual forum might exclude others. So I do appreciate that we're not going to have the perfect forum for every member of these groups. And I do want to take this moment to thank Rebecca Gruber and the volunteers who've stepped up to help us with this outreach, because it really is very time consuming and labor intensive, but we really think it's important. So I appreciate that feedback. As we have more capacity, we'd like to do multiple listening sessions for particular groups where we could then perhaps diversify the ways we're reaching them. But we are really open to as many suggestions as possible about how we bring a more diverse group of folks into the conversation. And so I appreciate your comment, and I'm sorry if that particular session isn't a great fit for you, but we have tried to create other ways that people can give us feedback so that if the sessions aren't a fit for them, there is another way that they can share their thoughts.
Yeah, and I'll just add too. I mean, as a not as a senior, but just with as a parent of young children, often attending meetings is difficult, and I'm sure everyone in their life has challenges attending. We do really welcome feedback and comments, on the email as well. I know that the survey is exciting and encouraging as the number of responses is only a tiny fraction of people, and I believe, as Ms. Evans mentioned about the comment around the high school, I'm sure a lot of people would say, what affordable housing survey. So to the extent people want to share feedback or ideas, we appreciate the things people have said tonight, and we view those as one more forum, but not exclusive.
I also just want to thank you for your suggestion about CITC, Don. I think that's really creative and I love it. CIT community investment tax credits are specifically for certified community development corporations. I'll look forward to looking to see if there's a fit there. It would be an unusual outcome. I don't think there's other municipal trusts that have qualified for that, but I love the idea, and I'll go take a look at that myself, because that credit is really valuable. But I don't want to miss the opportunity to double down on, if you would like to get a 50% tax credit for a donation, that is the best tax shelter you can possibly get for your charitable contributions. Please give to the the Housing Corporation of Arlington, and use that vehicle. Back to you, Phil. Sorry, it was a PSA, but you
no, I was
Don. I wanted to spike it.
Thank you. Yes. Well, I don't know. We don't need to keep people later, but also don't want to throw people out. So all right, I'm going to officially call it done and say thank you to everyone again for your time and your thoughtfulness and your comments and your support. This is, as I said at the beginning, it's a team effort sort of at every level, and really appreciate the support and coming out and all of your feedback.
If I could just add one other thing, I know we've had a couple of questions direct to me about where the slides are for tonight. So we will be posting those to the Trust website probably first thing tomorrow morning. And sending a notification to anybody who registered for this forum, and also sending it out via the trust's mailing list. So if people have signed up for the mailing list, we'll just be sending out the word so that people can see the results that were shared tonight.
Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.